The house on the corner of Elm Street looked like any other in the neighborhood. It had a small, green patch of grass in the front and a white fence that needed a fresh coat of paint. To the neighbors walking their dogs in the evening, it seemed quiet, peaceful even. But 10-year-old Leo knew better. He knew that the silence inside that house was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of holding your breath. Waiting for the other shoe to drop, Leo sat at the kitchen table, his legs swinging back and forth, the heels of his sneakers thumping softly against the wooden chair leg. He was eating a bowl of cereal, though it was nearly 7 o'clock at night. His mother, a tired woman with kind eyes that had seen too much sadness, was washing dishes in the sink. The water was running, but not full blast. It was just a trickle, as if noise was a crime. Then the front door opened. The sound of the heavy latch clicking shut made Leo freeze. His spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. His mother's hands stopped moving in the soapy water. They didn't turn around. They didn't say hello. They just waited. Silas walked into the kitchen. He was a big man with broad shoulders that filled the doorway. He didn't walk so much as stomp, his heavy boots making the floorboards creak. He smelled like old cigarettes in the garage where he spent most of his time. He didn't look at Leo. He didn't look at his mother. He just went to the refrigerator, opened it with a force that made the bottles inside rattle, and grabbed a beer. "The house is a mess," Silas grunted. His voice was low, like a dog growling in the distance. "I work all day to pay for this roof, and I come home to a dump." "It's clean, Silas," Leo's mother said softly. She turned off the water and dried her hands on a towel, her movements slow and careful. "I just finished the floors." Silas slammed the refrigerator door. The loud bang made Leo flinch. He hated how he flinched. It made him feel small and weak, but he couldn't help it. It was like his body had a mind of its own. "Oh, don't talk back to me," Silas snapped, though the woman had barely spoken above a whisper. He popped the tab on the beer can and took a long drink. Then he turned his eyes to Leo. "Why are you still eating? You're going to ruin your dinner." "I wasn't hungry before," Leo whispered, looking down at his bowl. "Look at me when I talk to you," Silas commanded. Leo lifted his head. He looked into Silas's eyes. They were dark and empty, like a shark's eyes. There was no warmth there, no love. Just a cold meanness that made Leo's stomach turn into a knot. "Put the bowl in the sink and go to your room," Silas said. "I want to watch the news, and I don't want to hear you chewing." Leo didn't argue. He didn't ask if he could finish. He slid off the chair, carried his bowl to the sink, and walked quickly toward the hallway. As he passed the living room, he saw his sister Maya. Maya was 15. She was sitting on the couch, a textbook open on her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was staring at the television, but it wasn't turned on. She looked like a statue, pale and stiff. When Leo walked by, she glanced at him. Her eyes were wide and scared. She gave him a tiny, almost invisible shake of her head. "Don't make a sound," the look said. "Just go." Leo walked down the hall to the bedroom he shared with Maya. He closed the door, but he didn't lock it. They weren't allowed to lock the doors. He sat on his bed and put his pillow over his head. Trying to block out the sounds from the kitchen, even through the pillow, he could hear Silas's voice. It started low, mumbling complaints about his job, about the traffic, about the price of gas. Then it got louder. Then came the crashing sound, maybe a plate thrown against the wall, maybe the chair being kicked over. Then his mother's voice. "Please, Silas, the kids will hear. Let them hear." Silas yelled back. "Maybe then they'll learn to be useful around here instead of being parasites." Leo squeezed his eyes shut. He hated the word parasite. He knew it meant something that feeds off something else until it dies. He knew Silas thought he and Maya were useless things that just ate food and spent money. But Leo tried hard. He made his bed. He did his homework. He stayed quiet. He stayed invisible. Hours passed. The house eventually went quiet. The heavy silence returned. But now it felt heavier. It's like a thick blanket that was hard to breathe under. Leo waited a long time after the lights went out. He waited until he heard Silas's loud snoring coming from the master bedroom at the end of the hall. Only then did he take the pillow off his head. The door to his room creaked open slowly. Maya slipped inside. She was wearing her pajamas, but her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, hugging her own body. "Leo," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm awake," Leo whispered back. Maya came over and sat on the edge of his bed. In the moonlight coming through the window, Leo could see her face. It was wet with tears. There was a red mark on her cheek, just below her eye. It looked like a haunt. Leo felt a hot flash of anger in his chest. It burned like fire, but he pushed it down. He was small. Silas was big. "He's mad," Maya whispered, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her pajamas. He said, "I'm failing math." He said, "If I fail, I'm grounded for life." He said, "I'm stupid." "You're not stupid, Maya," Leo said fiercely, sitting up. "You're the smartest person I know. You help me with my spelling every week?" Maya let out a shaky breath. "It doesn't matter what I am. It only matters what he says I am. He's the king of the house." Leo looked at the red mark on her cheek. He wanted to touch it to make it go away, but he was afraid it would hurt her. "He hurt you." Maya turned her face away. "I made a mistake. I left a cup on the table." He tripped on it. He got angry. "Tripping isn't your fault," Leo said. "Everything is my fault," Maya said, sounding tired, like an old woman. "That's just how it is. You just have to stay small, Leo. That's how we survive. Don't look at him. Don't talk back. Just disappear." Leo looked at his big sister. She used to be happy. She used to sing in the shower and braid her hair in colorful ways. Now she wore her hair in a messy bun, always down, always hiding. She wore long sleeves even in the summer. "I don't want to disappear," Leo said quietly. "I want us to go away." "You can't," Maya said, standing up. "Mom won't leave. She says she loves him. She says he's going through a hard time." "She's wrong," Leo said, his voice hard. "Just go to sleep," Maya whispered. She leaned down and kissed the top of his head, something she hadn't done in a long time. "Tomorrow is a school day. Just keep your head down." Maya went back to her own bed in the room next door, leaving Leo alone in the dark. Leo lay back down, but he didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling. He thought about Silas's shark eyes. He thought about the red mark on Maya's cheek. He thought about the way his mother flinched when a can of beer popped open. He knew that this wasn't normal. He knew that other dads didn't throw plates or call their kids parasites. He had seen his friend David's dad at the park. David's dad picked him up and spun him around. He laughed. He bought ice cream. Silas never bought ice cream. Silas only bought beer and fear. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the living room. It sounded like glass shattering. Then came the screaming. It was his mother, high and terrified. Then came Silas, roaring like a bear. Leo scrambled out of bed. He ran to his bedroom door and opened it just a crack. He could see the hallway light was on. Silas was shouting, "Who do you think you are?" "I called the police, Silas." His mother screamed back. Her voice sounded different, stronger, but scared. "I can't do this anymore." There was a struggle, a heavy thud that shook the floor. Leo's heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to jump out of his chest. He wanted to run out there. He wanted to help his mom, but he remembered Maya's words, "Just stay small." Then Maya's door opened. She ran into the hallway. She stopped when she saw Leo peeking out.
"Get back in your room, Leo,"
she hissed, looking terrified.
Leo said.
He was surprised at his own voice. It didn't shake this time. "What's happening?" Maya grabbed his arm, her fingers digging in. "Don't come out." But it was too late. The front door banged open, but it wasn't Silas leaving. It was the sound of wind and rain blowing in. There were footsteps on the porch. Heavy running footsteps. Police. "Get on the ground!" The voice was loud and authoritative, cutting through Silas's, shouting like a knife. Blue and red lights began to flash through the front window. Turning the hallway into a disco of colors, Leo watched as Silas stumbled out of the living room. He looked confused. He looked drunk. A police officer grabbed him, pushed him against the wall, and snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. Silas was fighting. "Get off me," This is my house. Get off. Another officer ran past Leo's door, going to help his mother, who was sitting on the floor, crying and holding her arm. Leo stood frozen in the doorway of his bedroom. He watched Silas being dragged toward the front door. As Silas passed the hallway, he stopped. He looked right at Leo. The look in Silas's eyes wasn't angry anymore. It was a promise. It was a dark, ugly promise that said, asterisk, you did this. You will pay. Asterisk, Leo took a step back into his room. He slammed the door shut and locked it. Even though he knew he wasn't supposed to, he climbed into his bed and pulled the covers over his head. But even under the blankets, he couldn't stop shaking. The police were here. Silas was gone. For the first time in years, the monster was out of the house. But as the sirens wailed outside, filling the night, Leo knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something else. And he had a feeling that the next fight was going to be harder than hiding in his bedroom. He thought of Maya's face. He thought of her telling him to stay small. Leo clenched his fists under the blanket. He didn't want to be small anymore. He didn't know what he was going to do yet, but he knew that he was the only one who really saw everything. He was the ghost in the hallway. And now, the ghost was going to have to speak. Asterisk, for the first few days, the house felt huge. It was like living inside a giant, empty bubble. Silas was gone, locked up in a cell downtown, waiting for a hearing. But even with him miles away, his shadow still stretched across every room. Leo walked on his tiptoes, instinctively avoiding the creaky floorboard near the kitchen, even though no one was there to yell at him for it. His mother, a woman named Alina, walked around like a ghost. She would start to make dinner, stop, stare at the wall for 10 minutes, and then sit down without eating. The phone rang constantly. She'd let it go to the machine. The reality of their situation started to sink in on the third day. A woman from the Department of Social Services came to visit. She had a kind face, but a clipboard that looked very serious. She sat them down in the living room, the same room where the broken glass had been swept away only days ago. "We need to talk about the court case," the woman said gently. "The prosecutor needs to build a strong file. Since the main incident happened inside the house, Maya's testimony is very important." Maya, who was sitting on the far end of the couch, pulled her knees up to her chest. She was wearing an oversized hoodie, trying to make herself as small as possible. "I don't want to," she whispered. "I can't." "Maya, I know it's scary," the woman said. "But if you don't tell the judge what happened, he might let Silas go back home. Do you want that?" Maya's face went pale. She shook her head frantically. "No. Never." "Then you have to talk," the woman insisted. That evening, a tall woman with sharp glasses and a briefcase arrived. This was the prosecutor, District Attorney Evans. She didn't waste time with small talk. She opened her folder, took out a pen, and looked at Maya. "Okay, Maya," Ms. Evans said, her voice brisk and businesslike. "I need you to tell me everything that happened on the night of the arrest. Did he hit your mother? Did he threaten you?" Maya stared at the coffee table. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She started shaking, just like she did when Silas used to yell. "I don't remember." Leo sat on the floor near the window, watching her. He knew she was lying. Maya had a memory like an elephant. She remembered everything. She just couldn't say the words. It was like her throat was closing up. "You don't remember?" Ms. Evans asked, sounding frustrated. She tapped her pen on the paper. "Maya, the police report states there was a struggle. There were marks on your mother's arm. You were in the hallway? You must have seen something." "I was in my room," Maya said, her voice barely a squeak. "I was sleeping," Ms. Evans sighed and closed her folder. She looked tired. "Maya, if you get on the stand and say you were sleeping, the defense attorney is going to tear you apart. They are going to say you are confused or that you are making things up. If that happens, Silas walks free." The threat hung in the air like smoke. "Silas walks free." The color drained from Elena's face. "Please, Maya," she begged. "Just try. For us." Maya started to cry. It wasn't a loud sob, just tears streaming down her face. She stood up suddenly. knocking over a stack of magazines. I can't. You don't understand. I can't say those words. If I say them, he'll know, and he'll come back and kill me. She ran to her room and slammed the door. Ms. Evans looked at Alina. I can't force a child to testify if she shuts down, the lawyer said, gathering her things. But without her, I don't have much. The neighbors didn't see enough. It's going to be your word against his. After the lawyer left, the house felt heavy again. It wasn't the fear of Silas being there. It was the fear of him coming back. Leo went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. He saw his mom standing at the sink, gripping the edges so hard her knuckles were white. She was crying quietly, her shoulders shaking. He's going to win, isn't he? She whispered to the empty room. He always wins. Leo looked at his glass of water. He felt a cold knot in his stomach. He thought about Silas's face the night he was taken away. The look he gave Leo. It wasn't the look of a man who was defeated. It was the look of a man playing a game. Later that night, Leo heard a noise in the hallway. He opened his door and saw Maya. She had her backpack on her shoulder. She was wearing her shoes. She was tiptoeing toward the front door. Maya. Leo whispered. Maya froze. She looked at him, and her eyes were wild, like a trapped animal. I have to go, Leo. Go where? Leo asked, stepping into the hall. Away. Anywhere, she whispered. I can't do the court thing. I can't look at him. I'll just run away to the city. I'll be fine. Leo walked up to her. He knew she wasn't fine. She was 15 and scared out of her mind. If you run away, they will think you're lying. They will let Silas go. And then he'll come find Mom. Maya bit her lip hard. I can't stay. I feel like I'm suffocating. Leo reached out and took her hand. Her hand was cold and clammy. Don't go, he said. Please. I'm not brave like you, Leo, she cried softly. I'm not strong. You don't have to be brave right now, Leo said. He didn't know where the words came from, but he felt a sudden surge of responsibility. He was the little brother. He was supposed to be the one protected. But looking at Maya, he realized she was broken. She couldn't fight this battle. She could barely survive the night. Trust me, Leo said, squeezing her hand. Just wait a few days. Don't leave tonight. Maya looked at him for a long time. Then she slumped against the wall and slid down to the floor. She dropped her backpack. Okay, she whispered. I'll wait. But I don't think I can do what they want. Leo sat down next to her. I know. The next few days were a blur of waiting. Leo didn't go to school much. He stayed home, watching the house, watching his mom, watching Maya. He noticed things he hadn't noticed before. He noticed how Silas always kept the blinds closed. He noticed that Silas spent hours in the garage with the door locked. On Friday afternoon, while his mom was napping and Maya was staring at the TV again, Leo went into the garage. It smelled like oil and stale smoke. It was a mess, full of boxes and old tools. Leo walked around the piles of junk. There was a workbench against the back wall, covered in grease rags. Leo remembered Silas always keeping a certain metal toolbox locked, even though he left the other ones open. Leo found it tucked behind a stack of old newspapers. It was a heavy red box. The lock was a simple padlock, but the hasp was rusty. Leo looked around and found a heavy screwdriver. He jammed it into the lock and twisted with all his might. With a snap, the lock broke. Leo lifted the lid. He expected to find tools, maybe nails, but inside there was a stack of notebooks and a bundle of papers wrapped in plastic. Leo picked up one of the notebooks. It wasn't a diary. It was a log. In Silas's messy, angry handwriting, there were lists, dates, times. Asterisk Maya looked at the boy next door today. Need to punish her? Asterisk Elena bought the wrong cereal. Throw it against the wall so she learns. Asterisk Leo felt sick. It was proof. It was proof that he wasn't just an angry man who lost his temper. It was planned. It was calculated. He was controlling them like puppets. Under the notebooks, wrapped in plastic, were photos. They were blurry photos of Maya while she was walking to school, photos of the house. And worst of all, there were photocopies of legal documents. Silas had been planning something big. He had been looking up how to take the house away from Alina. Leo shoved the notebook back into the box. He closed the lid. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He knew what this was. It was ammunition. He remembered how the lawyer, Ms. Evans, looked so frustrated. She needed facts. She needed proof. Maya was too scared to give the words, but Silas had written the words down for him. Leo looked toward the house. He thought about the courtroom he had seen on TV shows. The big judge, the jury, the serious faces. He knew he was just a kid. Who listens to a kid? But then he thought about the look on Silas's face as he was dragged away. The threat. Leo stood up. He brushed the dust off his jeans. He walked out of the garage and into the house. He walked past the living room where his mom and sister sat in the gloom. He went to the phone on the wall. He took the piece of paper with Ms. Evans's number that his mom had left on the counter. He picked up the receiver. He dialed the number. District Attorney's Office, a voice answered. "This is Leo," he said. His voice didn't shake. "I need to speak to the lawyer. It's about Silas. I know where the proof is." The morning of the trial arrived with a sky the color of old concrete. It was raining, a steady, cold drizzle that tapped against the windows of the apartment where Leo and his family were now staying. The house on Elm Street was too painful to stay in, so they had moved to a small place 2 towns over. Everything felt rushed. Alina moved around the small kitchen like a robot, trying to find shoes that matched and making sure everyone had breakfast. But no one had much of an appetite. Maya sat at the tiny table, staring into a cup of milk. She looked pale, almost like she was made of wax. She was wearing a dress that was too big for her. One her mother had bought from a thrift store the day before because they wanted her to look respectable for court. "Do I have to go?" Maya asked for the 10th time that morning. Her voice sounded hollow. Alina stopped tying her shoe and looked at her daughter. Her eyes were red and tired. "Yes, Maya. You have to be there. The judge needs to see you." "But I don't want to see him," Maya whispered, hugging herself. "I don't want to be in the same room." Leo stood by the door, wearing his one good button-down shirt. It felt scratchy against his neck. He looked at his sister. She was vibrating with fear. He remembered the red toolbox in the garage and the notebook he had shown to the police. He had done his part. He had given them the evidence. But Ms. Evans, the lawyer, had told them that wasn't enough. She still needed Maya to speak. She said the judge needed to hear her voice. "I'll be right there," Leo said softly. "I'll sit right behind you." Maya looked up at him. Her eyes were filled with tears that refused to fall. "It doesn't matter, Leo. They can't protect me. You know what he's like." "Not anymore," Leo said, trying to sound confident. "He's locked up. He's not gone," Maya said. "He's in my head." The car ride to the courthouse was silent. The windshield wipers swished back and forth, the only sound in the car. When they arrived, the building looked like a giant monster made of stone. It had tall pillars and wide steps that were slick with rain. There were people in suits everywhere, holding briefcases and talking on phones. They looked busy and important. Leo felt very small. Security was tight. They had to walk through metal detectors and put their bags on a conveyor belt. A guard with a stern face waved them through with a wand. When the wand beeped near Leo's belt buckle, the guard frowned, checked it, and waved him on. It felt like being in a prison, even though they were the victims. The courtroom itself was intimidating. It was a large room with high ceilings and wood paneling that went all the way up. In the front, there was a raised desk where the judge would sit. Below that were 2 tables. On one side, Ms. Evans sat, surrounded by stacks of paper. On the other side sat Silas's lawyer, and there was Silas. He was wearing a suit instead of his usual dirty t-shirt and jeans. He had even shaved, but the clothes didn't hide who he was. When Leo looked at him, he felt a cold chill run down his spine. Silas looked bored. He was leaning back in his chair, whispering something to his lawyer, looking around the room as if he owned it. Then Silas's eyes found them. He looked straight at the family. He didn't smile. He just stared, his eyes dark and heavy. Maya saw him at the same time. She let out a small, sharp gasp, like she had been punched in the stomach. She shrank back into her seat, hiding behind Elena. "Don't look at him," Elena whispered, putting a protective arm around Maya. "Look at the lawyer. Just look at Ms. Evans." "All rise," a voice boomed. Everyone stood up. The judge, an older man with white hair and glasses, walked in and sat down. He looked over the top of his glasses at the room. "We are here today for the hearing of State versus Silas," the judge said. "Proceed." Ms. Evans stood up. She looked calm and professional, but Leo could see a small bead of sweat on her forehead. This was it. "Your Honor, the prosecution calls Maya to the stand." There was a moment of silence. The shuffling of feet stopped. All eyes turned to the back of the room where the family sat. Maya didn't move. She was gripping the edge of the bench so hard, her knuckles were white. "Maya?" Ms. Evans called out gently. Alina gave Maya a little push. "Go on, sweetie. You can do it." Slowly, shakily, Maya stood up. She walked down the center aisle of the courtroom. It felt like a mile-long walk. Leo watched her. She looked like a ghost walking. She climbed the steps to the witness stand, a small box with a microphone in it. She sat down. The bailiff came over and held up a Bible. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" the bailiff asked. Maya stared at the Bible. Her mouth opened, but the words wouldn't come out. She looked over at Silas. Silas was watching her, a tiny smirk on his face. He tapped his finger on the table. Tap, tap, tap. It was a signal. It was what he used to do right before he got angry. Maya stammered. Leaning forward. I swear, Maya whispered. But it was so quiet, the microphone barely picked it up. Ms. Evans stepped closer to the stand. "Maya, can you tell the court what happened on the night of October 14th? Maya looked at the lawyer. Then she looked at Silas. Then she looked at her hands in her lap. She started to shake her head. "Maya, you are safe here," Ms. Evans said, her voice soothing. "Just tell us what you saw." Silas's lawyer stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness appears to be agitated. She is clearly under undue influence at home." The judge looked at Maya. "Young lady, if you have something to say, say it now. If you cannot answer, I will have to assume you have nothing to add." The pressure in the room was crushing. The air was thick with tension. Leo could feel his heart pounding in his ears. "Say it, Maya," he thought. "Just say it." But Maya was shrinking. She was disappearing into herself. She was shaking her head faster now. Tears were finally streaming down her face. "I can't," she sobbed. "I don't remember anything. I was in my room. I didn't see anything." A murmur went through the courtroom. Silas's lawyer smiled. It was a victory smile. "Nothing further," Ms. Evans said, her voice filled with defeat. She sat down heavily. The judge sighed and took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. It looked like he was about to call for a break, or worse, dismiss the case. Silas leaned back, looking satisfied. He adjusted his tie. Leo sat frozen in his seat. He looked at his sister, sobbing in the witness box, unable to breathe. He looked at his mom, who had her face in her hands, crying. He looked at the judge, who looked tired and annoyed. Then he looked at Silas. Silas was winning. Again, just like he always did. A hot, sharp spike of anger shot through Leo. It burned away the fear. He thought about the nights of silence. He thought about the hiding. He thought about the red mark on Maya's cheek that Silas put there. Leo stood up. He didn't plan to do it. It just happened. His legs just pushed him up. "Leo, sit down," his mom hissed, grabbing at his sleeve. But Leo pulled away. Ms. Evans looked back, surprised. The guard near the door took a step forward. "Your Honor?" Leo's voice rang out. It wasn't a whisper. It was loud and clear, echoing off the wood walls. The judge looked over his glasses. Everyone turned to look at the small boy in the oversized shirt standing in the back of the room. "Young man, this is a court of law," the judge said sternly. You cannot speak out of turn. Sit down, Ms. Evans. Leo shouted, ignoring the judge. You said I could talk. You said you would listen. Silas's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Remove the child. Ms. Evans looked at Leo. She saw the determination in his eyes. She stood up slowly. She remembered the phone call. She remembered the things the boy had told her. She realized the testimony was crumbling, and this was the only chance left. Your Honor, Miss Evans said, her voice gaining strength. The defense has challenged the reliability of the sister's testimony due to her emotional state. But the boy. Leo has indicated previously that he possesses knowledge of the events and evidence that is crucial to this case. He is 10 years old, Silas's lawyer scoffed. He has no place here. The judge looked at Leo, who was still standing, tall and rigid. He looked at Maya, who was sobbing in the stand. He looked at Silas, who looked furious for the first time. The judge was silent for a long moment. The court does not take lightly to interruptions, the judge said. However, in the interest of justice, and seeing that the primary witness is unable to proceed, the judge looked directly at Leo. Come forward, son. The courtroom held its breath. Leo walked out from the seating area. He walked past Silas's table. As he passed, Silas glared at him, his face twisted in anger. You keep your mouth shut, Silas hissed, just loud enough for Leo to hear. Leo stopped for a split second. He looked Silas right in the eye. Then he kept walking. He climbed the steps to the witness stand where his sister was. The bailiff helped Maya down, and she ran back to their mom. Leo climbed up into the big leather chair. His feet didn't touch the floor. They swung slightly, just like in the kitchen chair back home. The microphone was too high. The bailiff adjusted it down for him. You swear to tell the truth? The bailiff asked. Leo said. His voice didn't shake. He was ready, Ms. Evans walked over to him. She smiled a little, a genuine smile this time. Leo, can you tell us your full name? Leo, he said. Just Leo. Okay, Leo, Miss Evans said. Did you live in the house with Silas? Yes. And did you see things that happened there? Yes. Did you see what happened on October 14th? Leo looked out at the courtroom. He saw the jury watching him. He saw the judge watching him. He saw Silas. No, Leo said. Silas's lawyer let out a small laugh. No, so you have nothing to add. He stood up. Move to strike, Your Honor. This is a waste of time.
Just a moment, Miss Evans said quickly.
She looked at Leo. You didn't see the fight, Leo? No, Leo said. I was in my room. Like Maya said, then why are you testifying? The judge asked, looking confused. Leo took a deep breath. He wasn't looking at the judge anymore. He was looking at Silas. He was looking at the monster. Because even though I didn't see the fight, Leo said, his voice clear and steady, I know everything else. I know where he kept the gun. I know where he kept the books. And I know he's not done. The room went dead silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Silas's face turned a deep shade of red. He looked at his lawyer, panic showing for the first time. Objection. The lawyer shouted. Hearsay. Speculation. Overruled, the judge said, his eyes widening. He leaned forward, his full attention on the small boy in the chair. What books, Leo? Tell the court what you found. Leo looked down at his hands. He remembered the heavy red box in the garage. The feeling of breaking the lock. The power of knowing the truth. I know what he was planning, Leo said, and I'm going to tell you all of it. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The only sound was the low hum of the air conditioner and the soft shuffle of papers as Ms. Evans leaned closer to the witness stand. She looked at Leo with a mix of surprise and intense focus. She had seen the notebook, but she hadn't realized how much Leo understood what was inside it. Leo sat up straight in the big chair. He looked out at the people staring at him. He saw the jury, 12 strangers with serious faces. He saw the judge, looking over his glasses. He saw his mom and Maya in the front row. His mom had her hands over her mouth, and Maya was leaning forward, her eyes wide, so she was seeing her little brother for the very first time. Then Leo looked at Silas. Silas wasn't smirking anymore. His face was red, and his hands were gripping the table so hard his knuckles were white. He was shaking his head slightly, his eyes burning with anger. Ms. Evans put a photo on the stand. In front of Leo, it was a picture of the red metal toolbox taken from the garage. "Leo, do you recognize this?" "Yes," Leo said clearly into the microphone. "That's Silas's box. He kept it locked all the time. He told us we would lose our fingers if we touched it." "And what did you find inside that box?" Ms. Evans asked. "I found notebooks," Leo said. "Black ones. And a stack of papers." Silas's lawyer jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor. The child is testifying about items that were not properly entered into evidence yet." Ms. Evans turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the police seized these items based on the defendant's statement. I have the logs right here." She waved a folder at the judge. The judge nodded. "I'll allow it. Continue." Ms. Evans looked back at Leo. "Leo, tell the court what was written in those notebooks." Leo took a breath. There were lists, dates, times. Silas wrote down everything Mom did and everything Maya did. Like if Maya came home 2 minutes late, or if Mom bought the wrong brand of soup. What did he write after those things? Ms. Evans asked gently. "He wrote what he was going to do to punish them," Leo said. His voice didn't shake, but his hands clenched the edge of the chair. "He wrote things like, needs to learn respect and time to break the spirit. He wrote that he was going to make sure Maya was too scared to ever talk to anyone outside the house." A murmur rippled through the crowd. It was a sound of shock and disgust. The judge banged his gavel once. "Order in the court," Leo kept going. He wasn't finished. "He wrote about the gun, too." The silence came back, heavier than before. The word gun hung in the air like a dark cloud. "What about the gun, Leo?" Ms. Evans asked. "He hid it in the bottom of the box under a rug," Leo explained. "It was a black pistol. It wasn't registered. I heard him telling his friend on the phone that if the police ever came, he would use it before he let them take his house." This was the bombshell. Silas's lawyer looked like he had just swallowed a bug. He started scrambling through his papers, looking panicked. "Did you bring the gun to the police, Leo?" Ms. Evans asked. "I showed the police where it was," Leo said. "They took it." Miss Evans walked over to her table and picked up a plastic bag. Inside was a small black pistol. She held it up for the jury to see. "Your Honor, this is Exhibit B found in the defendant's garage, exactly where the witness said it would be." She turned back to Leo. "Leo, why did you look in the box? Why didn't you stay in your room like you were told?" Leo looked down at his sneakers for a second. He thought about the fear. He thought about the way he used to hide under his covers. He looked back up, "'cause Maya was going to run away," Leo said. "She was scared. And I know that if she ran away, Silas would win. He always wins because he makes people scared. But I found the books, and I realized he wasn't just strong. He was cheating. He was writing it all down. So I decided to cheat too." Silas stood up suddenly. "That's a lie. That kid is lying. He planted that stuff." The judge pointed the gavel at Silas. "Sit down, Mr. Silas. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt." Silas sat down, breathing hard, his eyes wild. He looked like a trapped animal. Ms. Evans walked closer to the jury box. "Ladies and gentlemen, this notebook shows that the violence in that house was not random. It was planned. It was calculated. The defendant was keeping records to control the family, and he had an illegal weapon. This shows intent and a threat to the community." She turned back to Leo one last time. "Did Silas ever tell you what he would do if Maya told anyone about the punishment?" Leo looked directly at Silas. The anger he had felt in the kitchen. The anger he felt when he saw the red mark on Maya's cheek. It all came into his voice. "He said he would bury her where nobody would find her," Leo said. "He said that nobody listens to kids." But he was wrong. Leo sat back in the chair. He was done. Ms. Evans smiled at him. No further questions. The judge looked at Silas's lawyer. "Cross-examination?" The lawyer stood up slowly. He walked toward the stand, but he didn't look confident anymore. He looked defeated. He adjusted his tie and cleared his throat. "Leo," the lawyer started, You found this box days after the arrest, right? Yes, Leo said. And you had plenty of time too. I don't know. Make up these stories? The lawyer suggested, trying to sound slick. Maybe you wanted to help your mom, so you wrote in the book yourself. Leo looked at the lawyer like he was stupid. It's Silas's handwriting. The police have his old papers from work. They can match it. And the gun had his fingerprints on it, not mine. The lawyer blinked. He looked at the judge, then at the jury, and then back at Leo. He realized there was nowhere to go. Every question he asked would only make Silas look guiltier. If he accused Leo of lying, the police evidence would prove him wrong. If he accused Silas of the gun, he lost the case. No further questions, the lawyer mumbled. He sat down and put his head in his hands. The judge looked at the clock on the wall. It was late in the afternoon. The tension in the room had changed completely. It wasn't just a story about a fight anymore. It was a story about a man who had planned to hurt his family, who had scared them into silence, and who had a secret weapon. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the judge said, I understand this is a lot of information. You have the notebook, the gun, and the testimony of this witness. You will now retire to deliberate your verdict. The bailiff stood up. All rise. As the jury filed out of the room, Silas turned to look at Leo. His face was twisted with pure hate. He didn't say anything, but he mouthed a word. You. Leo didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He held Silas's gaze until the deputies stepped in to move Silas toward the holding cell. In the gallery, people were buzzing. It was the loudest the room had been all day. Reporters were typing on their phones. The judge banged the gavel again. Quiet. Alina rushed forward and grabbed Leo, hugging him so tight he could barely breathe. She was crying, but they were happy tears. You did it, she kept saying. You saved us. Maya came over too. She put her hand on Leo's shoulder. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was different. She looked lighter, like a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Thank you, she whispered. Leo hugged his mom back. He felt tired, really tired. His legs felt like jelly from the adrenaline wearing off. But as he looked around the courtroom, he realized something important. The silence in the house was gone. The monster was locked up. They all sat down to wait. The waiting was hard, but it was different this time. They were waiting for freedom, not for punishment. Finally, after what felt like a million years, the bailiff came back in. The jury has reached a verdict, Your Honor. The jury walked in. They didn't look at Silas. They looked at the judge. They looked serious. Has the jury reached a decision? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor, the jury foreman said. He stood up. He held a piece of paper in his hand. The whole courtroom stopped breathing. Even the air conditioner seemed to pause. On the count of assault in the first degree, we find the defendant. The foreman paused for a second. Silas closed his eyes. Guilty. A gasp went through the room. On the count of possession of an illegal firearm, the foreman continued. Guilty. And on the count of attempted coercion of a witness, the foreman looked at Leo. Guilty. The judge banged his gavel as the room erupted in noise. People were cheering. Alina was sobbing into her hands. Maya was hugging Leo so tight he thought she might break him. The judge stood up and looked down at, Silas. The smirk was gone from Silas's face forever. He looked small and old and defeated. Silas, the judge said, his voice booming over the noise, you have been found guilty of serious crimes. You are a danger to your family and to society. I am remanding you into custody immediately. You will be sentenced in 1 week. 2 police officers grabbed Silas by the arms. They pulled him up. As they dragged him away, he looked back one last time. But this time, he didn't look at Leo. He looked at the floor. He knew he had lost. Leo watched him go. He watched the man who had made his life a living hell get dragged out the door. And for the first time in 10 years, Leo felt like he could take a full breath. It's over, Leo said. Maya looked at him. She smiled. It was a real smile, one that reached her eyes. Shh. No, Leo, she said softly, squeezing his hand. It's just beginning. Asterisk, the weeks that followed the verdict moved like a blur, but in a good way. It was like watching a movie in fast forward where the scary parts were finally over. The sentencing hearing had been quick. The judge, a man who had seen too much in his career, looked at Silas with no pity. He sentenced him to 15 years in a state prison. 15 years? To Leo, that number felt like forever. It meant he would be a grown man, 25 years old. Before Silas could even think about stepping foot on the street again, the first big change was the house. Alina decided they couldn't go back to the place on Elm Street. There were too many memories in the walls, too many shadows in the corners, too many bad nights on the floor. They packed their things into cardboard boxes. It didn't take long. They didn't have much to keep. They left the old furniture, the dented pots, and the fear behind. They moved to a different town, about an hour away. It was a smaller town, with fewer big buildings and more trees. Their new apartment wasn't fancy. It was on the second floor of a brick building, and the hallway sometimes smelled like onions from the neighbors cooking. But to Leo, it smelled like safety. It smelled like a fresh start. The best part about the new place was the noise. In the old house, they had to be quiet. They had to tiptoe. Here, the walls were thin, and the neighbors played music and slammed doors, and nobody got angry about it. For the first time in their lives, Leo and Maya were allowed to be loud. They could run down the hallway. They could laugh while watching TV without looking over their shoulders. But healing isn't like flipping a switch. You can't just turn off the fear completely. Maya still had bad days. There were mornings when Leo would wake up and find her sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at the door, her hands shaking. She was waiting for the heavy boots. She was waiting for the yelling. But the yelling never came. Usually, it was just Alina singing softly in the kitchen, or the sound of the mailman walking down the stairs. Leo would always go to her on those days. He didn't say much. He would just sit next to her and hand her a glass of water, or show her a funny drawing he made in school. He had become the protector now. He watched over her the way she used to watch over him. School was different too. Leo had to go to a new school, which was scary at first. He was the new kid. But he found that he wasn't the same scared boy who used to hide in his room. He had faced a monster in court. He had spoken up when everyone else was silent. Facing a classroom full of strangers didn't seem so hard after that. One afternoon, about 2 months after they moved, Leo came home from school to find Maya waiting for him on the front steps of the apartment building. She wasn't wearing her big, oversized hoodie. She was wearing a bright yellow t-shirt and jeans. Her hair wasn't in a messy bun anymore. It was down and looked clean and shiny.
"Hey, Leo,"
she said. Her voice sounded lighter, Leo said, dropping his backpack on the ground. "What are you doing out here?" "Waiting for you," she said, standing up. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was a flyer. "Look," Leo took it. It was a sign-up sheet for a community theater group. They were doing a play. "I think I want to join," Maya said. She looked nervous, twisting the hem of her shirt. "I used to love acting, you know. I want to see if I still remember how to be someone else." Leo looked at the paper, then up at his sister. He remembered the courtroom, how she couldn't speak, how she froze up. But she also remembered the night she ran away, and how she stopped. She was getting stronger every day. I think that's awesome," Leo said, smiling. "You'll be the best one there," Maya smiled back. It was a real, full smile. She reached out and ruffled his hair. "Thanks, little brother. You're pretty brave yourself, you know." That evening, Alina made dinner. They didn't eat cereal standing up or cold sandwiches on the run. They sat around a small table in the kitchen. Alina had made spaghetti, and there was even garlic bread. It was a simple meal, but it felt like a feast. They talked about their day. Alina talked about her new job at the bakery, where the boss was nice and let her bring home the die-old cookies. Maya talked about the theater group. Leo talked about a soccer game at recess, where he scored a goal. For a long time they had eaten in silence, afraid to speak. But tonight, the air was filled with laughter. The shadow that had hung over their family was gone. Later that night, Leo lay in bed. He could hear the crickets chirping outside the window. It was a sound he used to hate because it meant the night was coming, and the night was when Silas was the scariest. But tonight, the crickets just sounded like music. He thought about the trial. He thought about the day he stood on the chair and told the truth. He realized that he didn't do it just to put Silas in jail. He did it to set them free. He realized that being a hero isn't about being big and strong. It's about using your voice, even when it's shaking. He also realized that he didn't have to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders anymore. Maya was laughing again. His mom was singing. They were a team. There was a soft knock on his door. It opened just a crack. It was Alina Leo. "You awake?" she whispered. "Yeah, Mom," he whispered back. She came in and sat on the edge of his bed, just like she used to do when he had a bad dream. But she wasn't crying anymore. She looked peaceful. "I just wanted to say goodnight," she said, brushing the hair off his forehead. "And thank you for everything. I don't know what we would have done without you." Leo hugged her. "I didn't do it alone, Mom. We did it." She kissed his forehead. "Get some sleep, my brave boy. We have a big day tomorrow." She turned off the light and left the door open a crack. Letting the light from the hallway shine in, Leo rolled over and closed his eyes. He wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. He wasn't the scared little boy who hid under the covers. He was Leo, the boy who saved his family. He was Leo, the brother who gave Maya her voice back. As he drifted off to sleep, he dreamed of the future. He dreamed of Maya on a stage, under bright lights, speaking loudly and clearly. He dreamed of his mom, happy and laughing. And in his dream, Silas was nowhere to be found. There was no monster under the bed. There was no monster in the closet. There was just the sound of the wind in the trees and the promise of a new day. The silence was finally good.